thank Francis for putting on the recording, so I appreciate that. Here we go. Okay, so a little bit about my story. This is where I live now, in the mountains in near Elliot, a place called Korwa, in the Eastern Cape in South Africa. And it's been a long international journey. I started in the military here, played a lot of tennis in my career, and we I basically farmed for a while, went overseas to Australia and New Zealand, and decided to come back to South Africa. And it's all about my DNA, and my roots are here, and I really want to make a contribution to the future of South Africa by providing leadership training in South Africa, but largely aimed at an audience in the UK, US, and in Europe. So this talk is aimed at two audiences. One is HR managers and early career graduates, and it's to help them build their skills and to develop their sort of career aspirations around this. It's also for CEOs and managers. The idea behind this is to actually ensure that organizations and businesses can reduce the time that it takes to onboard people in their organizations. And that's what I'll get to a little bit later on. But essentially, it's really about compressing the time and the investment in people to get them into your organization. And it's through a process and a game plan or a map that I provide to these graduate students and mid-career learners. So just very briefly, I'll touch on this particular slide, and that is, reference to my army career, and then tennis coaching, and then in business overseas and farming in the Eastern Cape. There's a lot of travel involved, and currently where I live is the last picture on your right, and that is a lifelong ambition that I wanted to achieve, was to build like a little bijou resort in the Eastern Cape where I could invite people, and hopefully it won't be too long and we'll have leadership retreats right here in South Africa. So that's a little bit about my journey. I think because last week I told a story about the military, this time I'm going to tell you a little story about tennis. And I'm not sure if you're aware that the history of business coaching actually originated from a tennis coach in the 1970s, or the modern history of business coaching originated in the US with a guy by the name of Tim Galway. And he wrote a very famous book now. It's called The Inner Game of Tennis. But he went on to become a Harvard tennis coach, and there were claims that he made that were absolutely unbelievable. And he basically claimed that he could teach a person how to play tennis in 20 minutes. So there were these skeptics around there that just did simply not believe him. They said, this is absolutely impossible for you to teach someone to play tennis in 20 minutes. Now, to cut a long story short, I've put in your chat the article that actually has this video about how he coaches in front of his skeptics, how he coaches a lady who's 55. She's quite portly, if I can describe her as such, who'd never picked up a tennis racket in her life before. He got her onto a court in front of all these skeptics, and in 20 minutes, with the timer going, he teaches her how to hit a forehand, how to hit a backhand, and how to serve. And by the end of the 20 minutes, she's actually having a rally against this coach. And essentially what he does is his focus on the inner game was not to get people to think about this game, to actually not think about what they were doing, to reduce the stress and the actual detail of coaching the tennis by just making them feel absolutely calm and stress-free. Now, that brings me, and as I say, I've got the video for you and the article about Tim Galloway in the chat box. You encourage you to have a look at that. Why tennis was important to me, and I became a tennis coach and I've coached tennis throughout my life. The natural progression for that, for me, especially when I was coaching tennis in Tasmania, where it rained every day, was to actually go into business coaching and teach people how to lead effortlessly. And I think one of the most brilliant roles that I enjoyed was my last role in New Zealand, where I had a fairly big team, and there was just quiet and focus. And I absolutely loved that. We had such a great time together. We produced amazing results. And there were times when you would walk in there or you'd be in the office with your colleagues, and there was just perfect calm, perfect peace, and perfect productivity. And I just absolutely loved that. Of course, there were times when it was very exciting and we had other challenges that needed liveliness and engagement and the buzz of having things happening around you. So that's enough about me now. So I'm going to try and get on to the next slide. So what I'm going to quickly go through today, and I've chosen 3 topics which were in the lead up, and that was about motivating your team, conquering challenges, and building trust and credibility. So I'm going to jump straight into the first one, and that's about motivating your team. So on the screen, you'll see there, there's what, 8, 9, 10. There are another 17 little stories or points that were asked of the Forbes coaches list. There's a whole bunch of guys that are on the Forbes board about coaching. And there are 17 of them. And I'm not going to read them out to you. I'm going to just choose 3 that I really wanted to talk about. So the ones that I really wanted to talk about was the second one: make employees feel heard and valued. And I think this resonated particularly with me because I remember once doing a 360 with my team. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with 360, that is basically where everyone in your organization evaluates you. And you evaluate them, and it's quite a daunting task to get the results from that. Because when you get that, you realize how people feel about you. And my strengths were great. They were the ones that I kind of expected. And my weaknesses were very confronting, as I'm sure many of you would experience if you went through this similar exercise. And the one that confronted me the most was that I didn't listen. I did not listen. And man, when someone says to you as a leader that you're not listening, the feeling around that is actually extremely confronting. So essentially what I had to do was to absolutely focus on ensuring that I was listening intently to individuals and to people in meetings. And the first thing that, and I know that I'm not guilty of this, I never take a telephone into a meeting, but it's really being in control of your thoughts and focusing with your body language, with your eyes, with your micro movements on the person that you're engaging with, and making sure that you're not preparing a response to or a contribution to the conversation in the topic that you're actually in at that time, is really listening to them with all your senses and ensuring that your employees actually being heard, and then asking clarifying questions when you are speaking to your employee or your teammate to clarify certain things. And the techniques around that are myriad, but is so important in making sure that you have one or two questions to clarify the situation with your employees, to make sure, or your teammates, to make sure that you've heard them properly and that they've actually acknowledged that you've heard them properly. And I think that's something that I found very valuable and that I can relate to in these particular quotes. The next thing that I wanted to just mention was how to get employees excited about the company's vision. And this brings me to my next question. In the chat box, can you articulate what your company's vision is now? It's either a yes or no, and if you can, it would be great to hear what your company's vision is. It should be a really short little line. This is what we want to do. And while you're thinking about that, I remember once going for an interview for a short project in Tasmania many years ago, where the interviewers actually asked me, what is our company's vision? And I ummed and ahed and stuttered and splurted, and I just couldn't actually get it right. And to this day, I remember what that vision is because I was reminded of my own inadequacy in that moment. And that was to minimize the impact of cancer on all Tasmanians. I had a short project with a cancer organization where we were doing a project for them. So the company's vision was to minimize the impact of cancer on all Tasmanians. So if in the chat box you can articulate or just say whether you know what the vision is or not, that would be great. But I'm putting you on the spot again now. And perhaps that just gives you cause for thought at a later stage as well. So I'm going to then move on to the final slide that really hit me in this particular one that I think worked exceptionally well, and that is to have direct conversations with all your employees. It doesn't take any time at all to actually go and sit next to someone or invite them for a coffee and ask them 3 questions. You know, where are you now? How are things with you? And I mean, how are things with you? Because one never knows what's going on in the background. One never knows what's happening outside of your work environment. And having that direct conversation with your employee is a great way of building rapport between yourself and them, and also ensuring that they know that you know what's happening or worrying them in the background. And then too, having that direct conversation with your teammate is asking them where they need to get to, and if there are any obstacles in the KPIs and the goals that you've set together with them. And I think that, as I say, I'm just touching on the very top of the iceberg when it comes to getting to know your employees and having direct conversations with them. And remember that the more senior you are in an organization, when you're having a discussion or a chat with a junior employee and you've left your ego, you know, in the top floor, the greater impression that conversation is going to have with junior employees or junior teammates, because they will remember that for a long, long time. So if they've got any questions around this or particular topic around motivating your team, as I say, I've just touched on 1 or 2 items, and you have a question, please unmute yourself and let's have a chat. All good? Okay, so let's go on to the next one. And this one, I'm not going to read the slides, but you can see for yourself conquering any challenges that you have. And I'll refer to one or two very light experiences and one particularly distressing one. I think when you're really under a lot of pressure, what it really boils down to is coming back to the absolute basics and remaining so confident in yourself in achieving the basics that you will get through the challenge that's facing you now. If any of you have played a lot of sport, or you may have played some sport, you'll know that if you are set all and 5-3 up in a set of tennis and you're serving for the match, they're just 4 serves between you and winning that match. And the ability to have the confidence and the self-belief and the trust in your practice to win the rest of that match and not getting nerves and not getting what they call elbow in tennis, the ability to do that is the difference between winning and losing. But it's remaining so calm and so confident and having you understand that even if you lose that game, you've actually got another chance to win the game again. So it's really staying calm, and it's the self-talk and the thinking on the big picture that is absolutely going to win you that match. I can think of another really dire situation in my career where, very sadly, we had a tragedy that happened right next to my workplace when I worked in Christchurch, where there was a mass murder that happened almost 200 meters away from where we were. And this was the mosque attack in Christchurch some years ago, where 52 people were killed. And you can imagine the uncertainty at the time of hearing all the police and the sirens and everything happening at that time. And we were instructed just to sit down next to our desk, switch all the lights off, close the windows, and close and lock all the doors and just stay in place. At the time, one of my employees, who was an older guy than myself, actually had watched this horror as it was live streamed on Facebook. And the situation in our whole environment was absolutely stiflingly difficult to comprehend, because we had to sit tight for, I think it was 4 or 5 hours, that we just had to stay in one place. And we were thinking hard, obviously, how just to keep people calm and focused on their own safety and the people around us, just to be resolute that there were other people that were taking charge of the situation, and that we just had to not worry about things. And it was the conversations that we had with one another to chunk this down into the reality of where we were then, just to be still, just to be quiet, and that things for ourselves would be okay as best we could. Now, the impact that we had, that this had on our business and what we were doing, was obviously massive. And that's, once our people were safe, we realized, this is what I was thinking on. How is this going to impact on the project that we were going to do? Obviously, we didn't discuss it then, but it was a case of starting to wonder how this drastic situation was going to impact on us. And I think the presence of mind just to be really calm and to hold things together for everyone around us was something that not only me, but our whole team did amazingly well with. So I'm going to keep moving. The next slide, unless there are any questions around that, and I mean, this in particular was quite a remarkable occurrence, and I wouldn't expect, that there would be things like this that would happen to anyone every day. But it's also conversations, for example, with individuals whose family members may be very, very sick, who may be terminally ill, or who are facing really dire situations at home that one needs to be compelled to discuss and to have the empathy and sympathy with people like this, and to manage those in a calm, focused manner, I think is always an attribute of a great leader. So the next one I'm going to go through is this. Hang on. So here we go. And that's about building trust and credibility. In any situation, and I'm sure you've all heard this cliche, and that is, you've got to walk the talk. If you want to earn trust and credibility with your team members, it's really important that you actually demonstrate that you are trustworthy. You are worthy of their trust. And in all your dealings, as Penny said earlier, to be honest and transparent, and to be like Gerald has instilled in her those capabilities and the personality traits that she exhibits now are what she modeled herself on earlier in her career. And that's, I think, the essence of this, is to be the person, to be the trustworthy person, be the example, be the first one to help, be the servant leader, be the first one to extend sympathy, and be the first one to act on suggestions. Be the first one to listen and to be able to read the situation. Leadership is situational. You've got to really understand yourself and understand the situation around you, read it properly and confidently, and then you make decisions, discuss this with your team, and build the credibility that you so much crave and have earned. And once again, coming back to the conversation or the point I made earlier, and that is having a quiet, calm, pleasant place to work where there's a great level of trust, there's a great level of credibility, and there's a great deal of faith in your skills and your colleagues' skills, is something that is hard-earned, but is absolutely so worthwhile. The other thing I do want to just mention here too is to really enjoy and celebrate the culture of your team. One of the things that I thoroughly enjoyed was we actually had one person in our team per month think up something creative where we would go for a dinner at their home, or go for a whiskey tasting night at their home, or go and visit a famous garden and have a picnic there, or do something collaboratively together. And we would use this opportunity to reinforce the positive attributes of the individuals in the team. We build on the positive attributes of the people. We would actually publicly say, hey, Luto, or hey, Penny, this is what I really appreciate about you in our team. And thank you for doing that work. But it was actually saying this publicly so that they not only got your individual recognition, but they actually got the recognition in front of the team for one another. And it was very genuine, it was very heartfelt, and it really made a big difference, because we knew what the strengths and weaknesses were in the team. And I'll be the first to say, I always sometimes perhaps to my detriment, mentioned what my weaknesses were. And for instance, I had an unusual situation where I reported to the CEO and the board chair, and I hated writing my board reports every 6 weeks, absolutely hated it. So I got everyone to contribute towards my board report. We created a shared document, and they dropped their area of my board report into the board report. And that took so much pressure off me. It was the most, probably one of the wisest things that I did. Hey guys, I want you to write this section. I want these numbers from you. I want you to actually drop them into my report. And it used to take me ages to get all this right. And before long, it would be, even before I need to send them a reminder to give us their details, they would actually have it in the document already, and I'd be set to go. And I could go and discuss my board report with the chair and the CEO before we distribute it to all the other directors. So it was fantastic to be able to share my weakness, because it demonstrated, that I didn't like this and I needed their help, and they happily contributed towards it. So that's just a little tip there about building trust and credibility and the respect that you crave from your team members. Okay, so the next one I'm going to go on to is the program that we offer, or that I offer, and that is about the first 90 days in a business. We provide the roadmap for you to create or achieve those early wins, and to make sure that you achieve your leadership and influence goals within less than 90 days. And the reason for this is the following little slide, and that is about what's called the break-even point. So if you have a look at this slide, you'll see from left to right on the central axis here is that during the first 3 months of your onboarding as a mid-career leader or junior leader, you're actually consuming value in the organization. And only after 3 months are you starting to contribute value to the organization that you're with. So by 6-month period, your net contribution is actually where you break even, not after 3 months, but actually after 6 months. And in the research that I've done about this, it takes anything between $1,250 to $5,500 to onboard a new graduate. So it certainly pays the HR department, your manager, your CEO, to have an additional coach or a coach to help that break-even point come closer to the 5 and to the 4 by providing a roadmap for that graduate. So that's where, as I say, I like to offer my services and make a contribution to companies. And this is especially true when, for example, organizations have a whole bunch of people that are onboarding at the same time or simultaneously. So we can actually take them on a weekly chat and give them weekly tasks that they need to do in order to improve their leadership and influence capabilities as quickly as possible. So my next slide is really about the benefits of intentional planning for leadership. I'm not going to go into each slide in particular here. So instead of that, what I'd like to do is to actually offer to send this to you, so you can have a look at this and you can have a look at my notes as well. But essentially, you don't want to rock the boat when you are having a business or a leadership transition. You want to create faster integration. It must be smooth, and there must be stability in the organization. As many of you know, if you have a change of board chair or a change of CEO of an organization, there is a certain level of instability and uncertainty because they are now rewriting the strategic plan, and that's got to filter down. Into the organization and down to you and your team potentially. And that takes time. And remember this, that during a time of transition, don't think of the cost only being the cost to the organization of your transition. Think of it too as the advantages that other companies are enjoying over your organization during this time of uncertainty and indecision, or where there is potentially a little bit of instability with a leadership change. So think of the advantage that your company competitors are having during this time. And that's why, as I say, it's important to consider having someone externally to help with this coaching transition. I don't want to go into too much detail of what's actually in the actual framework, but essentially it's about assessing the situation properly. It's about building key relationships. It's about defining your goals and priorities as an individual, as a team, and how that contributes to the overall vision of the company. And it's a form of accelerated learning that is not going to impede on the HR department, and it's not going to impede on your direct report. It'll in fact benefit them greatly, because we provide this framework, and we also provide all the scripts and the ideas and the support around having those important conversations to secure early wins in your organization. So, Monimabis, can you just mute yours, please? Thank you. It's got a little bit of echo that's coming through. So the implementation strategies that we would go through would be what I've got on the slide here too, and we will go through that in detail if we are engaged to help your graduates or your mid-careers in a program to hasten their integration into the organization. I've got one more final slide, and those are my contact details, which you already have. But I do have one or two more questions that I'd like to ask. And one is, what has made you successful so far in your career? What is your greatest strength that you'd like to share with the organization about your help in your organization with the rest of the gang in the team today? So there's a question for you. If you want to put it in the chat, or you want to unmute yourself and have a chat to me or the group, that would be great. What has made you successful so far in your career? Anyone? Come on, Lutu, I know you want to have something to say. No? Thanks, Jen, for your contribution. Penny, yours too. I believe remaining authentic, hard work, and doing honest and good business. Absolutely. I can vouch for that. Thank you for your contribution, 100%. And coming back to Jennifer Eager, I worked as a colleague or alongside Jennifer's consulting company in Tasmania for a while. And she says that she's still trying to figure out. I think I do know what your strengths were. I think people underestimate themselves a great deal, and there's this element of self-doubt. And people's personalities, in many instances, people sort of hide the light of their personalities, their character, their energy, and their enthusiasm. And Jenny, that's what I would say is one of your greatest strengths. It's not necessarily, and the work I think was very easy for you to do, but when you are doing the work, and you exude all those characteristics around your personality, your smile, your energy, that to me is a huge contribution and a huge advantage to having someone like you in the team. And remember that people have different roles in these teams. Some are outward facing, some are more inward facing. And I think that it's really important to understand whether you're a starter, a hard work slogger in the middle, or a finisher. I'm very much a thinker and an ideas person and a starter. That's what I love doing. And I do have the sort of the marketing exuberance out there in the field, as it were. I like meeting people, and I love people, and I know you do too, Jennifer. So I think we've got to understand what our personality is and how we fit into an organization, and potentially choose roles that reflect that. So thanks, Jennifer, for putting that forward, but I think I'm going to give you more credit than you're giving yourself, and I hope that encourages you. Angela said that getting a personal brand and social proof book was a big accomplishment. Oh, that's fantastic, Angela. I'm really pleased that you've done that. I think that's a great accolade, and I was actually going to mention that, but you've beaten me to it. And that is that it's when people come back to you, potentially even years later, and thank you for stuff that you taught them or that you did for them, or how you encouraged them in the past. And I'll give you a little example, and one is that there were kids now in their 20s or late 20s, and they're having their own young children now. They're married and got their own families, and I bumped into them and they said, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if you could coach our kids now? You know, you coached us how to play tennis, and you gave us this gift of playing tennis that we've enjoyed for our whole lives. Now we want to play tennis with our kids because it is such a great family sport." And I thought that was a great accolade and a great privilege to have them tell me how much they've enjoyed their whole careers. This happened the other day too, when I bumped into a kid who I didn't even remember actually coaching, distinctly him. But he said he went on to become #1 in his school, Queen's College, in Queenstown in South Africa. And he said, "Well, you were the guy that taught me." I actually remember coaching his older brother, not him. And it was just such a cool thing to hear him say that I taught him that. And whilst that's not in a business example, it really is something that you can be very, very proud of. Yeah, so thanks for your comments, Jennifer and Angela and Penny. I really appreciate that. I'm very grateful for that. So I'm going to say cheers to you all now, and thank you so much. It's really lovely to have you. Any kind of comments or feedback that you'd like to give me personally, I'd be most grateful for. We've gone on for about 50 minutes. Thank you so much, Frances, for your help in the background. And Penny and Jenny and Monwabise, and Tuli was dropping in and out. Maybe she had some network problems. I'm not too sure on that. But it was lovely to have you. I'm very grateful. And we'll chat again soon. This is the second of the series, and we're going to do 12. So we'll cover lots more as we go along. So thank you so much. And I'll say good afternoon to you and good morning to Jenny and to Angela. Okay then, see you guys.